People say New Year's Eve is about new beginnings. They're wrong. Some years aren't meant to begin at all. Some moments are supposed to repeat forever. I learned that on the night when everyone around me celebrated midnight, and my clock never moved past 11:59 p.m. Story I've never liked New Year's Eve. The noise, the forced optimism, the way people pretend that time itself can reset just because the calendar changes. That year, I decided to spend it alone. No parties, no countdowns. Just silence, a dark apartment, and snow falling outside the windows. The city felt strangely empty. Not abandoned, paused. Streetlights glowed through the snowfall, and distant fireworks echoed like they were coming from somewhere far away, somewhere that wasn't quite real. At 11:30 p.m., my phone stopped receiving notifications. I didn't think much of it at first. I prepared a simple dinner, turned off the lights, and sat by the window, watching snow accumulate on parked cars that hadn't moved all evening. The air felt heavy, like the pressure before a storm, but the sky was perfectly clear. At 11:55 p.m., I checked the clock. Everything was normal. At 11:59 p.m., I checked again, and then nothing happened. The second hand froze. The digital clock on my phone glowed softly, still reading 11:59 p.m. I waited for the vibration, the notifications, the distant roar of celebration. There was nothing. The fireworks outside stopped mid-explosion, frozen bursts of color hanging in the sky like painted scars. Snowflakes hovered motionless in the air. The world had stopped right before the new year. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Power outage, phone error, a strange coincidence. But I could still move. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, turned the faucet. No water flowed. The refrigerator was silent. The hum of electricity was gone. Time hadn't slowed. It had been cut. I stepped outside. The cold hit me immediately, sharp and unreal. My breath formed clouds that lingered too long in the air. The street was empty, except for people standing completely still, faces frozen in laughter, arms raised with phones, mouths open mid-cheer. They looked like statues. Their eyes were open. That was when I noticed something wrong with the sky. The fireworks weren't just frozen. They were watching. The longer I stayed outside, the more I felt it, a sensation that this pause wasn't an accident. It wasn't random. It felt ceremonial, like the world had reached a moment it wasn't meant to pass. I returned to my apartment and locked the door, even though I didn't know what I was locking out. That's when I found the note. It was on my table. I hadn't written it. I was certain of that. The paper was old, yellowed, folded once down the center. There was no handwriting I recognized, only a single sentence, pressed deeply into the page, as if written slowly, carefully, many times over. It explained nothing. But somehow, I understood everything. This wasn't the first year this had happened. I wasn't the first one left behind. As the minutes stretched on without moving, I began to notice changes. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It had texture. A low, distant pressure, like something enormous shifting just beyond perception. I felt watched, not from any direction, but from the moment itself. Midnight wasn't late. Midnight was sealed. I searched the apartment for distractions, for proof that I still existed. Mirrors reflected me correctly, but with a delay that made my stomach twist. Shadows lagged behind my movements. And then I realized something horrifying. The longer time stayed frozen, the less human everything felt, including me. I don't know how long it took before I noticed the figures. They weren't people. Not anymore. They stood at intersections, near doorways, at the edges of buildings, shapes that looked almost familiar, but wrong in subtle ways. Too still. Too smooth, like they were waiting to be filled, waiting for replacements. I understood then what New Year's Eve really was, not a celebration. A handover. Every year, something old is supposed to leave quietly, replaced by something new. But sometimes the exchange fails. And when it does, time stalls. Someone has to stay behind to keep the balance. The note wasn't a warning, it was a receipt. My reflection started changing before I felt it. My breathing slowed. My heartbeat became optional. Cold stopped bothering me. Hunger disappeared. I was becoming part of the pause. part of the reason the world couldn't move forward. At some point, I stopped trying to escape. There was nowhere to go. Midnight doesn't arrive here. It waits, and it waits with me. I'm writing this now, still trapped at 11:59 p.m. The snow hasn't fallen in years. The fireworks are still burning. And I can feel the next replacement standing somewhere nearby, slowly becoming aware that something is wrong with their new year. When they arrive, time will move again. And I will finally stop.